Ah! 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 Nee! Nee! Ah! Ah! Ah!
In the U.S., they kill people every day. They deny them food and water while they're chained down, begging, if they're wards of the state. Do you understand this is going on now?
That's a trade-off society is making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, you know, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So you, of course,
but that's an interesting thing you just said, which is just the last 3 months in life for one person or something, because we haven't had a discussion of how to allocate that money. It means we lay off 3 teachers to do so. I mean, in other words, we haven't had this type of allocation.
We're making that trade-off because of huge medical costs that are not examined to see which ones.
Okay, that's enough. This is a total Dr. Evil you're dealing with here.
Microsoft founder Bill Gates has committed over $10 billion over the next decade to deliver vaccines to the world's poorest countries. Gates made the pledge while speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, saying that this year needs to be the decade of vaccines.
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
He said the commitment more than doubled the $4.5 billion his charity foundation has already given to vaccine research already.
Sweden being a great example of a generous donor. So at this milestone, we're essentially redoubling our commitment. Over this last decade, we've spent $4.5 billion on vaccine research and delivery. And today we're announcing a commitment over this next decade, which we think of as a decade of vaccines having incredible impact. We're announcing that we'll spend over $10 billion on vaccines. That will help invent new vaccines. That will help get some new vaccines out. That will help increase the coverage.
So there's important.
It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
But to develop diagnostic criteria and say this is this type of mental defect and this is that type, facial characteristic, strikes me as an early science trying to find its footing.
Goddard's test was not the only basis for identifying feeble-mindedness. Facial appearance was also used.
Every effort is made to pick out those whose appearance even remotely suggests the existence of mental disease or the possession of a psychopathic organization. Dr. Thomas Salmon.
Facial expression is a very valuable aid. Individuals possessing dull, stupid, indifferent, and apathetic countenances devoid of expression should be investigated more thoroughly for feeble-mindedness. Dr. Howard Knox.
And nobody really applied eugenics, which is the field that Galton founds, this field of human breeding. Nobody uses it more or more famously than the Nazis.
The public was never in any danger. The defendants never possessed at any time any real explosive material, and their arrest warrants were signed before they got in the car to head to the bridge.
Now that we know Vice President Dick Cheney and Senator Barack Obama are distant cousins, the New York Post decided to check into the genealogy of President Bush.
William Williams was interested in eugenics, the emerging theory that held that society was no stronger than its gene pool.
Vice President Dick Cheney, the man who's only a heartbeat away from the presidency, is actually a blood relation. He's President Bush's 9th cousin once removed. Cheney's cousin Barack Obama is also Bush's 11th cousin and the 9th cousin of Brad Pitt. President Lincoln was President Bush's 7th cousin 5 times removed. And Bush shared more than just a ballot with John Kerry. That's right, they're 9th cousins twice removed. Princess Diana was Bush's 11th cousin twice removed. And then there's this bombshell.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Sure, she may have been singing to JFK, but what about GWB? He is, after all, her 9th cousin 3 times removed.
The committee will ask the legislature to enact their recommendations come July of next year. The final draft will be approved December 18th, and from there it will go before lawmakers. If you or anyone you know may have been a victim of the eugenics sterilization program, you can contact the Department of Health and Human Services at 800-662-7030. More information on the eugenics sterilization program can be found on our website.
The challenge facing the United States is that we have to be right one time. I mean, 100% of the time. It's hard for me to explain why that was the case. Just take my word for it.
In this primary campaign.
I opposed this war in 2002.
But do you know their relatives? Obama is distantly related to 6 presidents: George W. and George H.W. Bush, Gerald Ford, Lyndon Johnson, Harry S. Truman, and James Madison. Obama's family tree also includes Sir Winston Churchill and Civil War General Robert E. Lee.
Thank you all. Thank you.
She's also related to beatnik author Jack Kerouac and the wife of Prince Charles of England. John McCain's ancestry was more difficult to trace, but it's known he's the 6th cousin of First Lady Laura Bush.
Incest was practiced by ancient Egyptian royalty. Mothers married sons and brothers married sisters to keep the power and the money all in the family. Like their Pharaonic ancestors, the British monarchy have a long history of incestuous inbreeding.